back to Country Tough with Brandy von Holten. Today, I have a living legend. What do you think about that title there, Buster? A living legend.
Well, I like the living part.
That does make life easier, right? So this right here is Buster McLaury. Did I say that right?
McLaury.
McLaury. Okay. See, I told you, I'm a clean slate. I don't know very much about you, Buster. But you know, with the name of Buster McLaury, right? Mm-hmm. Most people just call you Buster.
Yep.
Okay. Unless you messed up, then they might call you something. Oh, yeah, they got other stuff.
When I was a kid, little, my daddy got to call me Cowpuncher. And, of course, over the years, a cowboy just shortened that to Punch. So the nickname's always been Punch.
Okay. My nickname was Glamour with the Hammer. Just the hammer, as I'm raising my hand. So Punch and Glamour with the Hammer are now meeting, and we don't look like Punch and Glamour with the Hammer.
No, we don't.
So, all right, Buster. Now, I do apologize about not knowing very much about you, but I booked you here for a clinic after I met you at the 2024 Midwest Horse Fair, because we were both clinicians there. Mm-hmm. I was on my mule doing mounted archery, and you were there doing real cowboy stuff. So tell me, how many years have you been a clinician with the Midwest Horse Fair?
I went there first back in the early 2000s. I used to do some work for Purina, mm-hmm. and they sent me up there 2 or 3 or 4 different times, and then I hadn't been back until I met you up there.
Okay. So, and then I didn't know you. They had like a special banquet for the clinicians, and then to tell you the truth, I was like, wow, dang, this old cowboy's by himself. I'm going to invite him to dinner. And because your wife wasn't able to make it there, then I found out later that you were one of the clinicians, but your wife had been injured. And so, and you and your wife, whenever I looked at your website, y'all are together. Y'all are together for everything, all the clinics and everything. But now, here we are at our place in Missouri called Von Holten Ranch, and I was like, I'm finally going to get to meet his wife. Still ain't got to meet her.
No, she wasn't able to make it. I got her in a pretty good horse wreck here a little over a year ago, and horse fell on her and stepped all over and got up and fell on her again. And anyway, it messed up something in her guts. They hadn't figured out just what yet. But anyway, she's still having trouble with that.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to have you back so then I can, she's like Santa Claus to me, or like, on that commercial whenever Santa came in and the M&Ms were around the tree and they both fainted because they're like, they do exist. So I don't know. I haven't met Cheryl yet. But
she's real.
She's real. Okay. So, Buster, you have been married now for almost 50 years. Almost 50 years.
Close.
So, here we go. Let's hear the details of this wedding almost 50 years ago.
Well, I met her at a calf opener. My daddy and I were at a calf opening, and actually her stepfather had worked for my dad on the Triangle Ranch back when I was just a little kid. So I've known my father-in-law a lot longer than I've known my wife. But anyway, they come by and they introduced Freddie, my father-in-law, introduced his new wife to my dad, and Cheryl was with them and her boyfriend, and that's where I met her. There was just stepped off my horse and said hello, and I don't know. Sometime after that, we met at a dance there in Paducah, probably a rodeo dance, and just hit it off pretty good. So here we are.
And then she ditched that boyfriend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a bull rider. She didn't want.
She don't want no bull rider now. So, do y'all have any kids?
Yeah, we got 2 girls.
Okay.
Tiffany and Misty. Misty's married, got a family, lives down at Midland, Texas. Her husband is a superintendent on a couple of those fracking crews in the oil field. So he stays really busy and works hard. In fact, I think he's in North Dakota right now.
My dad did that stuff for a minute. So, yeah. And then what about Tiffany?
Tiffany lives up at Amarillo. She rides horses for a living. And she and her husband have a business where they build fence and do some construction work, and then he's got some of those big truck-sized dumpsters that they put around at construction sites.
Okay. So, all right, so they are blue collar.
Yeah,
everybody blue collar.
Tiffany she ride lots of horses and shows some rein cow horses.
Mm-hmm. She was, this year, I was not a clinician at the Midwest Horse Fair in 2025, but we had a booth there because of all the mounted archery equipment. And then I tried to get over there because, man, that's a busy ordeal, that Midwest Horse Fair is. But I went over there and I just had to, I left her like my phone number on a gum wrapper and her halter. And I was like, this lady's going to think I'm a weirdo because you told me to go meet your daughter.
Right.
But I didn't ever, it's just too busy. Yeah, it was hard.
Lots of people at that deal.
Mm-hmm. So, you got any grandkids?
Yeah, I got two step-grandkids and two grandkids. Our son-in-law, Michael, had two boys by previous marriage, and then he and Misty got married, and they've got a little boy that's 11 and a little girl that's 9, I believe.
Okay, so they're pretty close in age. All right, so let's get started with this resume of yours that, I booked you because you were just so polite. You were so polite, and people were like, Buster, Buster, Buster. And I was like, yeah, he was real nice, So, and then I was like, you know what? You've been a returning clinician. I just read the one little paragraph in there, and I was like, you know what? I want to ride with him. So here we are, and I called you, and you called me back. And, a lot of times people have other people answering their phones and all that. No, you answer yours, and you get back in touch with me. So I was like, man, I like the way this person does business. If your paperwork and your phone calls are right, then I know everything else is going to be right. And then here you are. Your clinic is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You arrived on Wednesday. You said, hey, I'm going to be this far away. Like, you communicated. And so if you're that good at communicating with me, then I know you're a good communicator with horses, because it's clear communication. A lot of clinicians are hot mess express. They just come in like a freight train, okay? And you are driving something the size of a freight train when you rolled it. I was like, wow, how many horses did he bring? But, man, so let's talk about the infamous, the 4.6s. I guess we can start there, unless you'd like to start somewhere else.
Well, that's where I started. And I back up one step on that communication deal. I think communication is the exchange of ideas or information between two entities. So with the horse, if you're not listening at least as much as you're talking, it's just a lecture.
Right. I can see that.
Nobody likes to be lectured.
No.
Anyway, that's my idea on it. If I could say one thing, one of the main things I learned from Ray Hunt was listen to the horse. But anyway, back to the 4.6s. I was born there. My daddy was wagon boss there when I was born, and it was owned by some people named Burnett. There was an old man named Sam Burnett put together the 4.6s ranches. There's one there at Guthrie, and then they have another ranch up in the Panhandle. And then his son, Tom, put together the Triangle ranches. There's one right east of Paducah, there where I live, and then there was one down at Iowa Park down by Wichita Falls.
Okay.
So by the time I came along, the old man had died, and it belonged to old Sam's granddaughter, Miss Ann, they called her. And so there was close to 450,000 acres in those 4 ranches. The 6s and the Triangles, 6s headquartered there at Guthrie, and the 2 ranches almost meet. It's only, 4 or 5 miles across the country between the 2 ranches. So when we moved up there when I was 5, and it's kind of a funny story, the fall before we moved up there, my daddy went up and worked through with the chuck wagon, so he'd kind of learned the country. The manager up there was retiring, and anyway, when they got through working and was pulling the wagon in, the cook had got drunk and let the team run off and tore that old chuck wagon all to pieces. There was pieces of wagon scattered for 2 or 3 miles there. And so they started, they'd start down at the 6s, and Daddy would send some guys down there, and he'd go. So they'd work through with the wagon down there, and then they'd move the wagon and horses up to the Triangles and work through there. And then my daddy had a friend that had a ranch leased off up the Pease River there, 15, 20 miles, and we'd go up there and work. It just wasn't but 50 sections up there, so it didn't take long to work there. So that wagon was out, 3 months in the spring, thereabouts, and probably four, 5 months in the fall. So and when we moved up there, the ranch didn't even own a pickup and trailer. So when you went horseback. Well, I trotted a lot of tired miles as a little kid.
So, rattlesnakes?
Lots of rattlesnake. In fact, that Triangle headquarters just southeast of the big house there, about, I don't know, less than half a mile, one of the biggest snake dens in the country. So yeah, we grew up around rattlesnakes, big ones.
Yeah, I'm from South Texas, and I remember my dad. He was a semi-truck driver, and he would talk about how they would look like tumbleweeds. Sometimes they'd get all balled up, and then my dad was a row cropper, and disc at like they disc late in the afternoon, and then the next morning came back, and by God, they had disc up hundreds of snakes that had been up, but was unaware of it because it was, it wasn't super light outside, and they were like, ah!
Sure.
Like, no, thank you. Have you ever ate rattlesnake?
Nope.
No.
I have to be pretty hungry before I eat a rattlesnake. In fact, I've always hated rattlesnakes, and I'm scared to death of them. But here, 4 or 5 years ago, Cheryl got bitten by a rattlesnake and come dang near dying. So I really got it in for a rattlesnake.
She's a cat.
She is.
Yeah, she's a cat. Dang. So, I'm from South Texas, and my dad was actually a rice farmer for a while. And so he leased out part of a farmland, and it was called Three Sides, because 3 sides of it was in different states, because it was so big. Yeah, right. So they called it 3 Sides. So, all right. So the thing that's current is all about Road to the Horse, and you came and brought your A game and won that wild card. Boy, I bet that felt good.
Well, it was fun. I really enjoyed that deal. It was just starting another colt. I didn't do anything different there than what I'd have done at home. Maybe rushed it a little more just because of the time constraints, but those. And then I won that, so I got to start a colt in the championship round there started on Friday afternoon. So Friday night, I bet there was half a dozen people come up and say, "Oh, you must be exhausted right now." I said, "I didn't ride but 2 colts today, and both of them were gentle." It wasn't a very long day's work.
Oh yeah, we have other clinicians come here. The only one that is he's been here every year that we've been open. This is year 11 for us to be open as a trail riding facility, and that's Lee Hart, and he teaches 8 hours straight, and people are like, "Whoa, I know you're tired," and he's like, "No, this is like a normal day of work, Actually, it's less hours."
Right.
So, yeah, they don't. A lot of people aren't used to being in that saddle this much, and I think his saddle's attached to him, So.
Yeah, I met Lee, I don't know, probably 25, 30 years ago. I used to judge the Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association puts on the ranch rodeo in the Oklahoma City area, and I judged it for several years. So I met Lee when he was working on ranches up in that part of the country.
So I had never had a horseback riding lesson until I met Lee Hart, because I'm 45 right now, and we started this when I was like 33, and that's about the age I was whenever I got my first lesson, and it was with Lee, and boy, I had some things wrong, and that man has tried to fix them, but he had his hands full because I'm a lot, and I'm one of the best riders out of my family, but that just meant that they were really bad, so it didn't mean nothing, But I went to my first obstacle competition. I used to do a bunch of full contact fighting, and I went the weekend before. I fought in Oklahoma, and I qualified for nationals as an Olympic level fighter. And then the next weekend, I went to my first horse competition as an adult, and I was like, well, I'll do novice and intermediate. They had 2 different courses. I got dead last, and I got disqualified, and I was like, wow, I don't know anything. It's hard to go from one sport being like, known and really good at it, I'm a really good fighter, to, wow, I didn't know how bad I was. So they had like 10 obstacles, and I think I could do like 2.5. I was unaware that my horse would not load into someone else's trailer because it loaded into mine. And then, I thought leads were just for people on English saddles. I didn't know that was for people in Western saddles. And my family, we were always super heavy-handed. We were heavy-handed, like mean, because that was what I was raised with, and that's what they were raised with, and now that stuff, I know so much better now, and I can help. I help a lot of people, that have never had any kind of formal lessons. Right. I take a lot of, I help them with those big things like that, and then help them go into these other clinics, Mm-hmm. But boy, poor Lee Hart, he's had his hands full. That man has helped me with Tennessee Walker Mule, Missouri Foxtrotter Mule. One time I rode a ladies world champion Pasofino. He's helped me out with orphan horses that were pretty rough. He's helped me out with things I didn't have no business owning. Mm-hmm. And then he's helped me with things that I'm never going to get rid of that are kind of spoiled. And then he's helped me. Each horse gets better and better because I get better and better.
Sure.
And, but that man's changed my life, and he's helped me. It's kind of been like a ripple effect, which I'm sure you've seen that, where if you train one person and then they can ripple out to all sorts of people.
Well, so. that was always Tom and Ray's idea, was for a person to kind of get onto some of this and get it working for them and then share it with others. So that way a lot of horses got some help. And this clinic deal, this is supposed to be about the horse. Mm-hmm. It's not about making me look good or making a human look good. It's about getting the horse a better deal. And I know about heavy-handed. I didn't grow up doing things this way. I can tell you 900 ways to rope and choke and tie up and down and force and intimidate and make a horse do something. I know all about that stuff. All I need to know about it. I'm trying to learn more about this other side of the deal. I didn't know. It's just ignorance. If you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah, we didn't.
Until you get exposed to something different.
Yeah. Well, and then after that, I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing right and doing better. But and ignorance was bliss, and I was blissful because I had a lot of ignorance, and I wasn't even aware of it. So.
Yeah, I always got along good with a young horse. I never did claim to be a bronc rider. I could ride most of them, but I like to rope, so I tried to get mine at least gentle enough you could rope on them. Now that was a relative term, being gentle, mm-hmm. But and I was 28 or 9 years old when I met Ray Hunt, 27 maybe, and I was in charge of the bronc pen at 4-6. I was in charge of getting the Colt started, and they'd get 3 or 4 or 5 guys back there every summer, and we'd get them started and ride them. And so I thought I was doing pretty good until Ray come along. And the first thing that he ever said to me personally was, "Oh, hell, boy, you don't even know how to pet a horse." And that's the truth.
Like, whoa, yeah.
I thought he was talking to somebody else. He was behind me.
Yeah.
I looked around, and no, he was talking right to me.
You know what? I'm the first person in my family, my immediate family, go to college, and I was pretty smart at my small school, and then I went to the big university, and man, one of those classes, I thought that I had done well on a test, and I made a 9%, and I went up to the teacher, and I was like, "You forgot the other number." And he was like, "Oh, no, I didn't." And I was like, "Whoa, I just ate a humble sandwich." Exactly. Oh, man, I actually failed that class and had to retake it. It was a difficult class, and it was out of my scope. But, man, those humble sandwiches, whenever you build yourself back up from that, it makes you better whenever you build yourself back up. So what were some of the things that you learned from Ray?
Oh, it's he changed my life. He changed the way I saw horses and worked with horses and give the horse a little more credit. I've tried to learn why the horse does what he does the way he does it. And the big thing, the horses, they're self-preservation is real strong. They've been on Earth 60, 65 million years, and they've done everything they've had to do, including changing physically to survive. And that's all the horse is trying to do today. That instinct is still there. Mm-hmm. So if a person learns to work with that, then things can turn out quite different instead of just trying to make one do it or scare him into doing it. There's something special that God put in the horse where he really wants to please and help the human. But he says, how am I going to get these things done and not get hurt, not get in trouble? Once he figures that out, that he can get it done, he says, oh, that's all there is to it. I can do that, and some other little job, and he figures out he can get that done without getting in trouble. And he says, well, if that's all there is to it, I can do that. And the first thing you know, you build that confidence. He believes he can do anything you'd ask him to do. Mm. So Tom Dorrance always spoke of it. He said, you want your horse to feel like you could ride him up a telephone pole or down a badger hole. He'd feel like he would, but you'd never ask him because he couldn't.
Okay. Say that one more time. Say that last part one more time. If you would ride him up
a telephone pole or down a badger hole, he'd feel like that he would if you asked him.
Right.
But you wouldn't ask because he couldn't.
Okay.
You'd never ask him to do something that he couldn't do or that would get him hurt.
Right. Okay. So, you know what? So back to Lee Hart. I have, I've trained with him for 11 years, and I have seen him evolve. And one of his, he's had a couple of nodes on a tree where it felt like he really shot off from there and gotten better. Like I know he did some dressage for a little bit, then he got involved with the Mustangs, and it just kind of, I felt like he changed in this last year, and a good change. Like he's just getting, he's getting more refined. What are some of the big things that refined you? Can you think of those nodes on a tree that branched off? Or did I stump you?
No, that's something where I had to work on me, not on the horse. I had to figure out a way to communicate my idea to the horse in a manner he could understand it, so that I could do less and he would come up with more through understanding. And so when I do less, that is refinement. To start with, there's a lot of physical involved. Because the horse, he doesn't know, and so you got to do something to direct his feet or whatever you're doing there. And so there might be a lot of physical involved there. You wouldn't pull on him, but he might pull on you, either because he doesn't understand or he's afraid or whatever it is. But as you'd always, I tell people, you offer the softest, best deal you've got first. And then you go on and do whatever it takes to get a change. That might be weight. It might be firm up a little bit. It would depend on the horse and the situation. Mm-hmm. But it never ceases to amaze me how little it takes to move a 1,000-pound horse. I mean, it'll get to where one day you just think about it. He said, I'm already doing it. That's how perceptive the horse is to feel.
Well, I mean, think about how much they can fill a fly. I mean,
Exactly.
You know how many flies we would be?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
He feels a fly on any part of his body that's got hair on it in a windstorm. And yet we got bridles with ropes and chains and pulleys and wire and junk and to make them operate.
We had a clinician out here before, and it was a different Lee. It was a lady named Lee Smith, and I know one of my nodes of a tree was, it's hard for me to talk about my horse stuff because I'm such a much lower level, but then hopefully I'll connect with other people because there's more people that are low level than your upper level. But boy, whenever I first started taking lessons, I didn't know to use my legs or my seat. Okay, I was just hands only. Okay. And then I got where I was using my legs, like left leg on, turn right. And then Lee Smith told me, you need to think about your horse as a folding chair. And then she's like, you only use your legs because it makes your seat right. So, she'd tell me if you wanted to pick up the left leg of a folding chair, you would have she was like, think about where your weight would need to be on that folding chair. And then that seemed to help me out a lot.
Sure.
You know, so that was like a node, and that was just something that was just said to me of like, wow. You know, a lot of people dirt bike their horses. You know, they'll lean in when they're wanting to turn left. They put all that weight in the worst spot in the world, it seems like, you know, and they make it more difficult. So that was a node for me. So
see, the only time you can direct a horse's foot is as it leaves the ground. There's no weight on it. It's got some life. It's starting to leave the ground, so you can speed it up, slow it down, take it left, right, stop it, back it up. But after it hits mid-stride, you just want to leave it alone because it has to go to the ground. And when he's standing on it, it is physically impossible for him to move it. So no use asking him to move it when he can't. Right. It's like asking him to ride up that telephone pole. He can't.
Okay. So I had another cowboy that's been in our life here. His name's Chris May. And Chris May told me about how much he was one of the reasons I booked you too, and then he wasn't able to come. So I'm just like, hello, I booked somebody because he had such high regard to you. But he was talking about you doing, you said that nobody ain't got no business doing lead change at a canter if they can't do a lead change at a walk.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was just like, that like blew his mind to hear that come from you. So like, you're going to have to do some explaining to me about this lead change at a walk.
Well, you can walk a horse straight, or you can walk him in the left lead or the right lead. So his feet are basically doing the same thing they would be doing if you were loping. And he's got the leads at the trot. So if you start off, and it begins with a hind leg. So if you start off slow and just get where you can, just say you're working on the left lead. You get where you can step that right hind leg under, which means you have to cue it as it starts to leave the ground and step it under. Just at a walk, just walking along, just one stride. And then first thing you'll get two strides, and you kind of leave your leg there, and first thing you know, it feels like the life is coming out the left shoulder. So that's the left lead. And when you change legs, his hind end changed, so now you're in the right lead. It's another one of those things. It's real simple, but it's not easy.
Well, there's a lot of things that are simple that are not easy. You know, I told you, like, I moved to this state to try to go to the Olympics as a heavyweight fighter, and I'm not very tall, but I've got a lot of country grit to me, or country ignorance, whatever you want to say, you know. Those words might be interchangeable. But I know whenever somebody goes to kick you with all their might, like, you've actually got to step into it, you know, to stop that full swing.
Full power, yeah.
Boy, that seems really simple, but that is not easy. You know how hard that is, because you got to believe or you could get hurt, you know. So I understand about things that are simple but are not easy.
Right.
So
just like picking a horse's foot up, or say a back foot. If you're standing off out beside him and reach for that foot, if he kicks you, boy, he can reach. He got the whole power of that leg to hurt you. But if you're standing up close, he can still kick you, but he can't kick you near as hard.
Right. Same thing. Same concept.
Yep.
Same
Same
concept. Deal. So, do you also breed horses? Like, you train other people's horses? Like, tell me about your operation besides being a clinician.
I cowboyed for a long time and run a couple of ranches up in the Panhandle, and I run an outfit. I'd been there several years, and the owners separated and divorced, so I kind of ran out of a job all of a sudden. So we moved back down between Guthrie and Benjamin, where we knew a few more people, and I was just going to day work and ride some horses until I could find another good job. I didn't want to take the first $800 a month camp job that come along. And so I got riding some horses, and first one person and another would ask for a little help with a horse, and I'd help them. And the word got out that I was helping people, so I guess the first clinic I did was down around Fort Worth. There's a guy I knew asked me to come down and help him and some of his friends one weekend, and then I did some demos here, there, and yonder, and I got a letter from a guy in Red Owl, South Dakota. I had never heard of Red Owl, South Dakota. Barely heard of South Dakota. Anyway, his son was in high school, just about to get out, and he was pretty interested in starting colts and what have you, and they had a little ranch up there, so I asked if I'd be interested in coming up there and doing a clinic. And I said, well, why not? Never been to Red Owl. Quite an interesting village. It's about 60 miles east of Sturgis, and then you turn off the highway and go about 12 miles on a gravel road, and you get to Red Owl. And it doesn't take long to drive through it.
About 3 blinks.
Yeah. Anyway, that turned into a pretty good deal. That boy, I went up there and Cheryl and I did 2 or 3 clinics, 3 or 4. And anyway, I wasn't looking to do clinics. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted the job on the ranch. I loved working cattle and horseback. But Tiffany was just fixing to start to college, and Misty wasn't far behind, so I had to do something to make a living. And so I got doing a few more clinics, or Cheryl and I did, and she's a good hand with a horse too. But that still wasn't what I wanted to do. But I went to and then some ranches got to ask me to come and help the crew start their colts. And so I'd been to Pitchfork Ranch and helped them start their colts. And we finished up on a Friday, and I was fixing to load up and leave, and Bob Morehouse was manager there, and he said, "Hey, you better stick around." He said, "We're going to pull the wagon out Monday and go to Brandy." Well, I wanted to stay some kind of bad, go with that chuck wagon. But I was supposed to be in, I think, Madison, Wisconsin the next week to do a clinic. And so about Wednesday or so, I'm driving up through the cornfields and John Deere tractors in Iowa, and I'm having a pretty good pity party. I was by myself, and I thought, my daddy had missed a spring works in the state of Texas since 1940 or maybe before that. And both my granddads were cowboys. At least one of my great-granddads went up the trail with a herd of cattle. And here I am going to Wisconsin to talk to a bunch of people that ain't never going to turn a cow. I'm like, what in the hell am I doing? And then it kind of, I don't know if the Lord spoke to me or something come to me and said, well, horses have helped my family make a living for well over 100 years. And now I get the opportunity to give something back to the horse. And that changed everything.
Oh, you just made me fall in love with you even more. It's a good feeling to help the whole horse industry and help horses.
It is.
People don't have horse problems. Horses got people problems.
Exactly.
Our cowboy way of life, a lot of these horses, we have to do stuff to protect it. We need to keep people safe so they can keep on horsing, or what's going to happen to these horses. Everybody's all about their phones and electronics and all of this stuff. And there's a lack of young people getting into horses. If they're not raised around it, I come across that all the time. Women that are 50 that are getting their first horse and, they need help. But I write children's books, and the first book is about a horse named KTM. It's my big Palomino. And he wants to become a lesson horse because he's afraid that his species is going to bottleneck on the number of people that are owning them, because it's an older thing. And so the whole book is about the power of one positive person.
Right.
But I know that, here we are. We own basically a flake of sand. We have like a small facility, but we're small but mighty here. But I know that the ripple out of like helping people learn something and be safer, then they can horse for longer. It's about their quality of life. So I'm glad that you find value in what you're doing, to help the horse so much, and you help the horse by helping people.
Well, exactly. And anymore, most people don't have a job for a horse like they used to. So they have horses because they love horses, and they should be able to enjoy those horses. And so if you can just go for a nice conflict-free trail ride, that suits me fine. I don't think everybody has to show in the rein cow horse deal or the cutting or the barrel racing, or you don't ever have to do any of that stuff. If you could just get along with your horse and enjoy him, and he could enjoy being around you, man, what a great life for both of you.
Well, yeah. So then the cowboy way of life gets to continue, but then people get to go back to work on Monday. Yeah. I need people to be able to go to work on Monday, and I need them to be anxiously awaiting whenever they get to do something again with their horse. Right. Is what I've got to. That's what our industry is all about. I was explaining this to a gentleman that called me yesterday I told him, I was like, man, the cowboy way of life is under attack. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh, you ain't ever bought insurance. You even bought insurance to let people ride their own horse. I was like, there's a lot of trail facilities out there that if they don't own the land, like a lot of times there's a landowner and then someone rents the facility. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of those people, if they don't own the land, they can't even get the insurance. Like they're not even grandfathered in. Mm-hmm. And then, a lot of places where people get to go and ride is owned by the state. Well, then they can cut that off.
Sure.
I mean, like, it's a hot mess to be able to be in the equine industry in general. So what are a couple of things that you feel like you just need to record it and push it on play during your clinics? And I'm not talking eyes up, hands down. I'm not talking, or sit up. What's something that you find yourself saying on repeat?
All of the above. Okay. But I don't try to tell people how to ride. I'm not very good at giving riding lessons. But I try to get them to give the horse a job, and whatever it might be. Like the first thing we might do is just ride a big rectangle around the arena. So it's straight down the sides and across the ends, and make that corner sharp so that when you get to that corner, he doesn't just cut across, you make a little half circle. Get that inside front foot to reach. It shouldn't take more than 2, maybe 3 strides to get going 90 degrees the other direction. Well, to do that, you have to feel what's taking place underneath you and feel where those feet are and which foot's fixing to leave the ground. And then another deal I say a lot is, a lot of people have their halter or their bridle on the horse just for something to drag him around with. They just pull him over this way and drag him over that way, and they don't understand, so the horse never has a chance to learn that those reins are hooked to the feet. They're not up on his head to drag him around with. When you pick up that rein, if it's in time with that foot, it's easy for him to do what you're asking, and maybe even possible. Like, say, if he's standing on his left front foot and you pull the left rein, about all you can do is pull him off balance, and that scares him, so he gets to bracing against it, and it snowballs the wrong direction.
Well, I'm excited about taking your clinic, and then this will be so much better after I've experienced your clinic. That was like, I'm so excited about riding with you, because here's my thought process. Okay, so you're an older cowboy, right? We'll go ahead and say that. I know that might seem, but man, you're still cowboying. You know what I mean? If I seen somebody and they can't, they're not able to ride still, then I don't want to ride with them because they're doing something wrong. You're doing something right. So.
Well, the good Lord had to work overtime to take care of me, because I wasn't afraid to go fast a lot of times. It didn't bother me to push on them bridle reins. And so I've run horses places most people wouldn't even ride one at a walk. But
wow.
Geez, that's what it takes if you're going to punch cows down the country where I live. The cattle was, pretty trotty, and so it's like J.R. Edwards said, if you're going to gather wild cattle, you're going to get wilder than the cattle are.
Man. Well, I'm glad that you have brought it back down to ground zero for the clinic this weekend.
Yeah, we'll go slow.
Okay.
We'll go slow. If we can't get it done slow, there's no use putting speed on it.
So the clinic setup, you have it with 2 different sessions, and each session is, 3 hours long? And then in the first one we have, it involves groundwork, and it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then the other one, I think that was horsemanship 1, and then horsemanship 2, we have it on the 3rd day where we're going to be moving cattle on the 3rd day for session 2. So what do you do to ready people that have not been around cattle?
Well, I get them try to get it so they can direct that horse's feet, so they can get him to go where they want him to go, or help him if he gets afraid of something, and we'll work on that. If he gets afraid, he doesn't just run off or buck him off or something. And that's another deal. You've got to feel that coming and kind of be proactive there, because it's like I say, the horse's self-preservation is really strong. So when he gets afraid or at least a bit worried about something, his instinct tells him to go, leave. So you allow him to go. You just direct where he goes the best you can. And eventually you'll get where he doesn't feel like he needs to leave. It's like you get scared of this object, whatever it is. And he said, I got to leave. And so you can bend him around and change the hindquarters and said, "No, partner, you can stay with me." And you turn his head loose. He said, "No, I got to leave." So you bend him the other way. He said, "No, you can stay here with me." And eventually, over enough time, he'll get to where he says, "Well, maybe I can." So he kind of gets curious. Maybe he can live with this object or whatever it is that scared him. And so any new thing to a horse, any new thing, they'll go from fear to curiosity to confidence.
Okay.
And that's what we'll work towards is confidence. And if he's worried about the cows or whatever it is, we let him move his feet. Just direct where he goes the best you can. Because if you try to just stifle that, he might stay a while. Directly he'll climb out through that bridle. He said, "I got to go."
Well, that's kind of like whenever my dad always thought it was a good thing to tell my mom to calm down. That did not work out well.
Yeah.
That's a good way to have an uncalm
Exactly.
person with you.
Doesn't work that good. I saw it happen last weekend. So.
So here's my question to you. If you couldn't say quarter horse, okay? If you couldn't say quarter horse, all right, what would be what's one of your favorite breeds of horses? You got a favorite?
Oh, probably the thoroughbred.
Okay.
The thoroughbred has a lot of a lot of self-preservation.
Okay.
And they're tough horses. They're very sensitive. Most of them very sensitive horses. So that's they're treated right, handled right. They make really good horses.
Okay. I asked the mounted police officer the same question. He said, "Well, he's never had a bad Morgan in class." His answer was Morgan, and
I never been around Morgan horses. But when Ray Hunt, back when he was cowboying up in Nevada, he worked for a ranch called the TS for a guy named Roland Hill. And at that time, Mr. Hill was the largest Morgan horse breeder in the world. And that's what they rode cowboying on. So Ray said they were really, really good horses.
I think one of my favorites would be the halflinger because that's what I'm built like. Oh, my gosh. This poor Buster, he's like, who is this lady? Who is this lady? So, Buster, when the first time you met me, I had mounted archery equipment on, or I think I was doing mounted archery. I usually have my quiver on and stuff, and then I know that I'm a joke, so I've got I've got my mule, my Missouri Foxtrotter mule that's not gated, and I have his hair cut in a Stegosaurus mohawk because it matches his children's book about it doesn't matter what you look like to go for your goals. It doesn't matter what your appearance is, just go. And then, I'm a heavy-set girl, and then he's a mule. I mean, his back looks like you could iron something on it, right? So I have a used saddle on him, and the thing that worked the best is a cutting saddle, which is the exact opposite of what I need for mounted archery. So, and then JoJo, my mule, is a ladies' man, so he loves all the ladies. Okay, this ugly mule. So I got him a Latigo with 1950s pinups on it. So we're just a lot. Okay, we're a lot. And then, so that's what you met me with, was that going on. And then whenever I was at the Midwest Horse Fair, I brought my mule a friend. I brought Glamour with the hammer. That, I named my horse after my old fighting name. Well, then they had the Stallion Brigade. And so she was just trying to tell everybody that she was open for that. She was down for that. And I was like, people are going to think I'm an idiot. Okay. So that's the first time you met me, was all that going on. And then yesterday you came over. I got some booty shorts on because I've been out planting my bell peppers, and I'm dirty. Because I've been gardening, and I'm just like, Buster, I promise you, I am weird, but not goofy weird. Okay. I think most people would have ironed their shirts and stuff, and I'm like, I gotta get my peppers in the ground.
People that work for a living in the country, most of them not that concerned about how they look, because they're more concerned about they got to get something done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what we're rocking and rolling with. So, do you have another big adventure? You have another big, I know that whenever I called you over the winter, or right before winter, I think you were starting 12 or 14 colts or something, or 16, or it was a ridiculous number, and I was like, dang.
Yeah, we had quite a few through the winter. I've got a clinic up in Iowa next weekend, and then I'll get home on the 27th or 8th or something like that, middle of that week. And we got 40 head of colts coming in June to start, so there's no rest for the wicked.
So whenever you say you have 40 colts, is that you and Cheryl? Like that's y'all two, or Tiffany also?
Yeah, Tiffany's going to help, and then we got a couple of young men that's going to come and help. So there'll be 4 or 5 of us, get all those going. So it's and it'll be they're going to bring 20, and we ride them about 2 weeks, and then 20 after that. We ride them 2 weeks. So.
Okay.
So it's not that 20. 3 of us could do it, but I don't know. Some of these kids that I get hired anymore, their definition of work and mine is different.
Oh, I understand. I know what you're talking about. We got a good worker right now, and he's actually going to graduate high school this weekend. I might miss part of your clinic because I'm going to go see him.
Bet.
Yeah,
got to support that.
Got to be there for that stuff.
Young person that'll work anymore. You better take care of them.
Well,
encourage them.
This one that's working for us, his name is Matthew, and I think he's lost probably almost 100 pounds working for us because, we work that boy to the bone. And I always tell him, I'm like, I just need you from the neck down today. I was like, we got some work that's not going to be fun. And he signs up for it, and I'm like, all right, this is great. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people think work's a 4-letter word, but it ain't. It won't hurt you.
Oh, it won't hurt you. Works you okay? I heard you without you saying something. Well, I'm glad that you came here, Maura. Our next door neighbor is Leroy Van Dyke. He had a TV show, then he sang The Auctioneer, and he's our next door neighbor, and he's still performing at 95.
Oh, really?
So he would consider you a pup. Yeah, and our town, I think that's about it. That's, and us, Maura, we're right outside of Sedalia, and Sedalia is where the Missouri State Fairgrounds is at. And then that thing brings in like almost 300,000 people a year, and that fairgrounds is real active. We have all sorts of stuff going on.
I saw that when I drove by it there. Like a pretty big outfit.
Yeah, and then our land, been in the same family since 1906, and part of our perimeter was from the War of 1812. The government didn't have enough money to pay the soldiers what they had promised them, so they gave them some land from an upcoming state. And so our perimeter fence is still defined by part of that agreement from the War of... That's my husband's family.
Right.
That's not my family. So, it is now since I'm married in. My family, we were from South Texas. I was born south of Beaumont. And then I got to see Ricky Nelson's plane crash whenever I was 5 years old, and it was in DeKalb, Texas, and that's where Dan Blocker's from Bonanza. Right. So that was where, we were born in South Texas, and my dad was pipelining, and then I lived in Texas till my family got in a little bit of trouble. Then we moved to Arkansas. And then I got into fighting, and then I moved to this state all by myself, and then I met my husband, and then I stayed here.
Yeah, here we are.
Yeah, and then here we are in my office in my barn talking to Buster. And you never know where the world's going to take you.
That's true.
So, any closing thoughts or ideas for people?
About horses or just in general?
Oh, I'm down for one in each one of those categories.
Yeah. I would say enjoy your horses and thank God you got them.
Okay. Well, one more piece. What's the key to a long and loving marriage?
I don't know. It takes a lot of hard work.
It takes a lot of hard work? Okay.
And, Cheryl and I, we started this. I was telling you, we moved back out of the Panhandle and started doing a few clinics. And, of course, that wasn't year-round to start with, just one here, there, and yonder. But we kind of started a custom colt starting business. And we'd go to some big horse outfits and start, 15 or 20 or 40 or 50 or 60, how many they had, and hire a little crew and go around. So we done a lot of that. And so we worked together a lot through the years. And so we kind of learned, what the other one could do and what they're fixing to do, and it makes things go a little smoother. And if you go off and the husband goes off to office and comes in tired, the wife really doesn't know what he done all day, or whatever his job was, maybe driving a truck or construction, whatever it was. She doesn't really understand, what he's done and why he's that tired and this and that and the other. But when you're together there, you know it's hot and cold and sweaty and tough horses and a lot of dirt. And so I think that has helped. We've got to do things together for a lot of years, a lot of hard work together. And this place we got, we finally bought a little place, and it had a house on it, but it wasn't finished, and wasn't a barn or pens or anything. And so we just kind of built on it, done all the work ourselves as we could. And finally in 2020, during that China virus deal, I couldn't do any clinics, and I'd ridden a horse a year or two before for a guy that run a ranch that had a bunch of oil field on it. So I traded the riding and the horse for some pipe and sucker rod, thinking I'd build some good corrals there one day, because all we had was, picket, cedar posts, and panels I'd picked up here, there, and yonder, and it was relatively safe, but it was a sorry-looking outfit. But anyway, 2020 we built some good pipe pens and corrals and a couple of sheds, and for years our hay barn was a half-top stock trailer. We'd put a tarp over the hay, and for years.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell on myself, but I tell all the females in the world, don't marry a cowboy. I tell them marry a construction worker so they'll get their barn. I mean, I've been telling people that for a long time, because my husband's not a cowboy, but he's a construction worker, and that's why you're in this barn.
There you go.
Yeah. So don't, ladies, you got to choose barn, you got to choose fancy buildings or not, because to get a total package that's a cowboy that likes to do construction work, that's few and far in between.
Probably not happening.
Yeah, you got better luck winning the lottery, hon. So, hey, for today is my husband and I 20th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And the one thing that it's an 80% divorce rate for husbands and wives that work together. And I know why, because, I have been mad at him. I have not liked him. I have not wanted to be with him sometimes, but we've always worked past that. And then sometimes he gets to feel in like a roommate instead of a husband. You know what I mean? We just get way too, it's going to sound gross to say, but kind of like brother and sister, instead of husband and wife. And we really have to work on, shaking that honey tree. You know what I mean? You got to be like, all right, I'm going to do my hair and makeup. I'm going to shave, and I'm going to be a girl, and we're going to go out to eat instead of just being exhausted and going out with horsehair all over me and dirt all over my pants, just trying to make it special. And, it is work. And, something that's helped us out a lot is whenever we're fighting mad and ready just to, one person's going to say something like, I want a divorce. Before you say that, just say, I love you. Just say, I love you, at the end of the argument, and hug them even though you want to strangle them. And then it just kind of feels like it takes the fire out.
Well, the Bible says words are like seeds. Mm-hmm. They will produce a harvest. So you got to be careful with those words.
Oh, yeah. Boy, I know, people that have physically hurt me in my life, those things kind of fade. But, boy, people that have said things to me, those things have hurt. Just like, you remembered the one statement that Ray told you about, you didn't even know how to pet a horse, those words. But it makes you, it made you become better and stuff like that. But words will cut you down, so you do have to be careful with them. Be careful, even if you're talking, here I'll just tell you way too much information, But sometimes, parents, especially women, will talk about how unhappy they are with their appearance or something like that, and they've got a kid that looks just like them. You got to be careful with words even about yourself, because people are listening. My mama doesn't even weigh 200 pounds, and she talks about how fat she is, and I'm all like, girl, I'm way heavier than you. So people got to just be careful with words in general.
Right. Trying to think of a verse in Proverbs.
It's right
something about the words are the fruit of the mouth, and the person who loves them will eat the fruit of them. Will eat the fruit of those words.
Oh yeah, it means people are listening. They'll take it to heart.
Yeah, you'll say words are like seeds. They do produce a harvest of some kind.
Well, so if they wanted to get in touch with you, Buster, how do people get in touch with you and book you and do all of that? How do they do all that stuff?
We've got a website. It's bustercherylmclaury.com, and our contact information on there. A couple of phone numbers and an email address. So
okay.
Give us a call. We'll visit with you.
Yeah, it sure does make me happy that you put your wife on all your stuff. You know.
Yeah, we've been together a long time. We do this deal together, and she'd be here today if it's my fault she got in the wreck. So I feel bad about that. But anyway, that's done. So.
Well, yeah. Now you just gotta move forward.
That's it. That's all we can do.
Yeah, you know, one time my husband decided it'd be real funny to wind up a towel and then pop me. Boy, he hit me right in the eye with it, and then it messed my eye up. Boy, I still milk that. Every now and then. He'll be like, I don't want to do this. And I'll be like, you remember when you popped me in the eye with that towel? And then he's like, oh. So I know it's going to weigh heavy on there. And then if y'all are interested in finding Von Holten Ranch, you got to be able to spell my last name. It's V-O-N for Von, not Van, okay? And then the second part of it is Holten. And we tell everybody we're perfect 10, so we put the number in our name, okay? So it's VonHoltenRanch.com. My husband's German, but you wouldn't know that. You'd just think he's a redneck. But he's the fourth generation to own the family farm, and we bought it in 2013, and I plan on being here. I plan on being here after I'm dead and gone because I want to be here.
There you go. And I'll tell you folks, I came in yesterday, so I got out and rode my horses today, and this is a wonderful place to ride horses. It's a beautiful country, and they got a lot of trails. It's a real pretty country, and you got a nice covered arena out here, and an outstanding obstacle course. Somebody put a lot of work into that thing.
Oh yeah, that's my non-cowboy. That's my husband that did that. I do like that 1946 fire truck that we've got out there.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
I put my judges up in the top of it in the back. That's got the wooden bed, so then they can see. Kind of perches them up. But my dad's friend won that in a poker hand, and then that friend owed my dad some money. So
I wondered how that come from. So you have contests out there now.
Oh yeah, we have something called Country Tough Trail Versatility. We have a trademark on the term Country Tough. That's why I have a magazine called Country Tough Times.
I see.
And then we do homesteading where we have all these instructors come in. It's called Country Tough Homesteading. Mm-hmm. And then we have Country Tough Trail Versatility where we do trail obstacles and a ranch horsemanship pattern. And then we combine it for a versatility. So we have everything except for cattle. And I hope you know how special you are because whenever I booked you, you were like, oh, I want to use your cattle. And my husband doesn't let anybody use his cattle. Those cows have never been worked with horses before. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've lived beside them. So I'm excited about this, but I didn't ask my husband because, it's easier to give forgiveness than permission. And I was just like, Buster's using the cows on the third day. And he's like, ah.
But we'll try to treat them right.
Oh, I knew you would. All right. Well, thank y'all for tuning in to Country Tough with Brandy Von Holten.